Alright, well, welcome back to the Engineered Angler. Today we're going to go back in time and do a little bit of a classic lure build. Some of you old timers might recognize this lure. I don't want to infringe on anybody's copyright, so we'll just call it, it rhymes with Crazy Mike. Let's call it that. This is a great first time lure builder project, or even if you've been building lures for a while. This is a fun build. It makes for a really productive little lure that really works all year long, so stick around. Really no mystery here. You can tell what lure I'm sort of replicating here. And I'm talking about a Lazy Ike. And Lazy Ikes have been around since the 1930s. I used to fish with them in the 70s when I was a kid in New Jersey for smallmouth and whatever else would hit them. It's a nice little lure. They actually have a really cool little action. They're simple. There's no Lexan lip. The design is super simple, and weighting and balance is just easy. And they're pretty snag free because of the angle of that cut face. They actually run pretty nose down and tend not to get snagged that easy. If you're just getting started making lures, this is a nice first crankbait. So let me show you how you can replicate this shape. Alright, so all you're really going to need is a blank piece of paper, a pencil, a simple compass, and a ruler that has centimeters. So I'm going to be working in centimeters, guys. So just take your inch ruler and turn it over. Okay, so first thing you're going to do is just draw a vertical line somewhere in the middle of your page. It needs to be about maybe 15 centimeters. Now take your compass and open it up to 9.4 centimeters. And then you want to take and transfer that arc from the first little line you made at the bottom across. And then again from that first dot, measure up 4.8 centimeters and make a little mark. Take your compass, squeeze it down to 5.9, and then from that new little hash mark you made on this vertical line, create that next arc. Draw a line between the two intersections, one there, one there. And from the vertical line where it intersects with that horizontal line you just drew, put a little mark 0.9 centimeters away, and then put a mark 3.5 centimeters away from the vertical line, and then put a mark 2.7 centimeters away. Now you're just going to draw a raise from the point of that second arc through those dots that you just drew. Now from this point to this point, draw a straight line. That'll be the diving surface. This is the end of your lure. You'll place your belly hook right at the point where this line crosses the bottom arc. The tail hook will go right at the back surface of your lure. And then for the tie-on eye, measure from the top point of the lip 1.1 centimeters, and that will be your tie-on spot. And then you can refine the hard edges, like fairing the back a little bit and rounding the bottom of the lip. There's really only one really critical cut, and that's that straight edge right there that forms the dive lip. And I want to make sure that's on the edge of the wood. This way, I don't have to cut it. So I'll align it with one of the hard edges of the wood. And now I'm just going to use this Elmer's tape runner to glue it down. Then it's just a matter of cutting off the excess. And we're ready to go out to the saw. This lure shape is so simple. I can just freehand the taper into the tail. It's a really simple shape, and I think I've got it. Now I can take it to the sander and get it shaped. Now it's just a matter of grinding back to my guidelines and then sighting down the lure to make sure I'm getting what I want. And just repeating that until I get comfortable with the shape. Usually, it takes a little longer than you think. Now, as you shape it and you start to taper around the edges here, you got to remember that you can't really do that on the very end. So you've got to leave it more or less flared out here as these tapers get shaped. Here it'll round off really nicely and it'll leave sort of a rounded flat area here. And back here we'll round it almost perfectly circular at the tail. And you just have to go from circular at the tail back to almost rectangular at the lip. All right, this is pretty good right here. It's a good idea to stop while you still have a little extra work to do with hand sandpaper. So I'm going to go back in the air conditioning and finish this with some hand sanding. And at this point, I'm really just refining the shape, making sure I've got nice symmetry. And I look at things like flat spots. If I've got a flat spot on one side, does it match the other flat spot? Do I want it in there? Do I want to sand it round? So now I'm sighting down and seeing if I've got my roundness nice and even, and I can see I need to take a little more off the right side here. And I'll just continue to do this for another 10 minutes or so until I'm sick and tired of it. And then we'll go on to sealing this wood. What I'm going to do is use a single piece of wire that will bend this way, come down to capture that belly hook eye, and then come back up and follow the contour of the body to there. That means I'm going to have to cut into the body from the top, and I'll drill a hole here to be able to drop that hook eye down from the top. I'll show you how I do it. First, let's go ahead and use our drawing to place the location of these hardware. And so right here is where my belly hook eye is going to go. There's my nose eye, and then the tail eye is in an obvious place, right? Now I'm going to cut a groove right down here with a very thin saw blade, and I'll drill that hole after I've got that cut in. Alright, so I've got the slot cut in, and you can see it runs to the center of the very tail. And now I've got to create a harness, and I think I'm going to go ahead and just use the drawing that I put in my template. And I'm going to use a wire that's a little thinner than I typically use, just because I don't believe I need a very heavy wire for this. For this, since these coils will be hidden inside the body, I like to just give it a loose kind of a bale wire twist, and I think hopefully you can see that. And now I just need to make the rest of the bends. I'm going to arc this wire to kind of match the arc of the body, and then get my bend in. That should do it right there. And then I just need to make my bend for my tie-on eye. And now the tricky part is getting this last bend in for this eye. And that should do it. I'm going to go ahead and cut this, bend it down so it'll be in the little hole, and everything will be locked in. So that's pretty good. So now I need to drill a pilot hole. The bit is always so much bigger than I expect. And And you can see the tab on the tie-on eye goes down into the hole as well, and that all get sort of glued in with resin. Alright, that looks pretty good. I'm going to have to cut this in just a little deeper, and I think we're going to be good. Alright, so I've got the wire harness already embedded in it. You can see how they align with all our original drawings, so I guess that's a good thing. So you may have noticed that this time around there was no math and no solving for densities or anything. That's because I already know the density of this wood, but it's really similar to cedar in hardness and in density. So if you're used to using cedar, this will be right in your wheelhouse, so no worries. We do need to add some weight, but just a bit. I'm adding 1 gram of weight right behind the hook eye. But first, I need to fill this slot. I'll take the 2-part epoxy and a little cheap Ziploc, you know, the kind they put little parts in. These are pretty inexpensive. You can buy them in bulk online. And I'll go ahead and squeeze out what I think I'll be using, and then you just sort of mix it up. So what I'll do is I'll cut the little corner off, and just the slightest bit of the corner off, not very much at all, just enough to get it to flow, and that'll do it. And the first thing I like to do is to get it to fill the cavity that I drilled here, and you can see it's kind of flowing in the top and filled at the bottom. I'll just keep filling in this gap. That'll get the initial amount in there. I think I've got most of the wire covered all the way forward, and then I'll have some filling to do, but I'll do that with UV resin because that cures really fast and sands back really easy and nice. And we're ready to put some weight in it. Now my intention is to put about 1 gram or a little over 1 gram, that's fine. And what I'm going to use is this little split shot. And it looks a little rough right now, but all that will disappear with a little bit of filler. Alright, so to fill those little holes, I'm just going to use this UV resin, and I'll top it off. It only takes a few seconds. Alright, that should do it right there. And I'll continue filling in what's left of the little gap that I left on the very top. And overfilling it isn't too bad of a deal. This resin actually is hard, but sands really nice. Alright, so I've got it sanded down really smooth, and now I need to clean it up just a little bit with some alcohol and then spray that sealer sort of mid coat on it. Alright, I'm going to use the polyacrylic, and it's 15% thinned down with just distilled water, and I'll spray that on with my airbrush. Alright, we'll let that dry for about 15 minutes and give it another coat, and do that a couple times. Alright, so I let it dry, and I've given it a very light sanding, and now I'm going to give it a clear coat with this UV resin. And the reason I like to put a clear coat on it, first of all, the UV dries really fast, so it's not a big deal to do it. But if you're going to have a problem with your clear coat, it's going to probably happen in that first coat. So I like to get that out of the way. If it gives me a problem, I can sand it back and get a good coat and then start painting. And then I feel pretty comfortable that subsequent coats will be nice and clear and free of flaw. So let's go ahead and give this thing a coat. All right, so that should be a pretty decent little coat. Try to do it thin on the first one. Let's put it in the UV chamber. All right, it's been about 30 minutes. Looks pretty good. Pretty nice shiny finish, nice and hard. Now I'm gonna go ahead and give it a really light sanding and wipe it down, and let's start painting this thing. I've got it wiped down with alcohol, and I'm gonna keep it on the lure bow until we're done here, because I don't want to have to wipe it down again. First thing I want to do is I'm gonna coat it with opaque white. I was considering on going with something very similar to this, sort of greens, kind of baby bass kind of a color. But I think I want to go with shad. I'm going to go with like a blue shad with a dot on it. I want to start by covering the white with pearlescent white. So I really like that sort of shimmer you get from pearlescence. All right, now I'm going to put a yellow stripe sort of from about where the eye will be to the center of the tail. That's going to look good. Let's get the other side. All right, so there's that stripe and that stripe. Now I'm going to put some mesh on there, and we'll do some blue scale pattern. All right, so I'm going to use pearl blue to get started with some scale pattern, and I'm going to protect the yellow stripe with the same thing I had on there. All right, that looks pretty cool. Now we just need to get some little bit of darker color. All right, I opened up a new bottle of blue and I spilled it all over myself, and now I'm covered in blue paint. So wear gloves. That's a pretty brilliant blue. I want to kind of soften it with something. I think I'm going to go with a really light, transparent kind of gray color. So I'm going to get out these Badger airbrush paints. They are really funky, kind of oddball colors, but they're all transparent. This one is called Midnight Blue, but in reality it's kind of like a weird gray. So I'm going to give it a misting just along this line, just so it isn't so brilliantly blue and yellow. And I think I'm going to turn this dark blue up here a little darker blue with this gray blue color. Now I want to go with a spot for an eye, and I'm going to put a false eye back here. Now for some pearlescent red on the lip. I'll let it dry, and then I'll give it a mid coat of polyacrylic before the clear coat. It's been about an hour. I'm ready to pull this out of here. And let's take a look at how it came out. it looks pretty nice. Check it out. I'm happy with it. I'm gonna put some hooks on it. Normally I would put at least 2 coats, but I want to get out there on the lake and put this thing in the water and see if we can get some underwater shots. Alright, you got to be pretty happy with a finish like that. I'm really happy with it. Well, thank you for watching. I hope this inspired a few new lure builders. It's a real simple build and you get a nice lure. I'll see you in the next video.